I'm Bill McWilliam, President of Cascadero Copper, CCD on the TSX Venture Exchange. Cesium is one of the world's rarest metals with a growing industrial demand. Drilling is underway on our Tehran property in Argentina to prove up a cesium resource. Cascadero's patent-pending leach process has the potential to make Cascadero the lowest cost supplier of cesium in the world. Visit our website, cascadero.com, or phone us at 604-924-5504.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Rafe Mair, former BC Cabinet Minister and Canada's longest-running #1 radio talk show host. Welcome back to the show, Rafe.
Jim, nice to be here.
A week to go on the BC election. What stood out for you so far?
Well, I guess the thing that stood out is very little. There's a lot of snapping and snarling going on. I don't really see a great deal of solid policy. There are all sorts of incidents. The premier telling off a lady who didn't like her and that sort of thing. But I don't honestly see anybody coming forward and saying, look, this is what we've got to do. We've got a problem coming up. We've got a shortage of money. We've got a BC hydro problem. We've got to deal with Site C. We'll do this, do that. I just don't see that happening. Now, I must admit, Jim, I did not watch the leadership debate because it's either watching that and being ill or sitting back and reading and relaxing and feeling better the next morning.
Exactly. Watching the snakes fight may not be the best thing.
Well, it's just... well, because I've been through those things myself, I know how phony they are. I know that you can get yourself excited because you see one person winning like it was a horse race, but they're not winning because they're doing anything particularly brilliant. They're just looking a little better than the other person, or they got a good quip off, or something like that. You know, the old one-liner like Kennedy got off on Nixon years ago. And those things and polls. They sour my outlook, and I've got to write things about these things, and I'm not very often right anyway. But those things do nothing to help me with my knowledge base. I can tell you, not a thing.
It seems to me all three leaders have said, "I'm the best leader," but they haven't explained why.
Well, I think that's a very good way of putting it, because leaders usually have, or should have, some sort of a direction that they're going, that they can sort of draw the audience each time, even though what the questions are around them. They keep drawing the audience into the one or two things that they're really keen on getting done in the province. And you see, really skilled leaders doing that. And I just don't see that happening here. I see a lot of personalities, but I don't see very much policy. And I'll tell you what troubles me about this, Jim. Dr. Weaver is doing very well for the Greens, considering where they are. But he's only going to be a spoiler. If he gets 4 or 5 seats, it's only going to be a spoiler. We're going to have a coalition, and we're going to wonder who's going to be in that coalition. And I can't see either of them being particularly happy coalition partners. Horgan, I don't know where he is on anything. I'll give you an example. In our constituency, as you know, we talked about this before, our big issue is the proposed LNG plant in Squamish. Now, they've got a pretty good NDP candidate here in West Vancouver, Sea to Sky. And she got up, told at the meeting the other day, and said, look, I'm against that mill, which everybody is applauding her for, but the party policy is that we're in favor of it. Now, I say that there was a rumor going around, and this would have been the way to go, that Mr. Horgan was saying, look, after the election, if we win, we're going to have a proper environmental assessment of that mill. And that's what people want. I mean, and I'm not going to just toot our own horn, but I suspect this is in other places around the province. This particular project, the house sound is too narrow by every standard, including the industry standard, for the tank it'll take. It's dumping crap into the ocean, which is going to kill all the life that's only just come back. On and on it goes, and none of these things were assessed in a phony baloney assessment that came up about 3 or 4 years ago. And it would seem to me that if Mr. Horgan on 1 or 2 issues, particularly LNG, had said, look, we're going to assess these things as we come. We're not against it. We're not saying we're 100% for it. We're going to make these assessments. It would have been a lot better than to just say, oh, no, doesn't look too bad for us, and wind up with a constituency that he could easily win by just being moderate about this thing. I mean, I'm not kidding you. The NDP could actually win West Vancouver House Sound. And, but he can't do that because he just can't do it. And it seems to me that there is not very much good sound politics in any of the 3 parties, except perhaps Dr. Weaver. He's nothing to lose, of course. He just gets up and picks away and tries to land a knockout blow, as Mulroney did on poor old John Turner some years ago. So he doesn't have to worry. But the other 2, they just don't seem to me to have any of the royal jelly.
We'll have more with Rafe Mair right after the break.
Lotus Ventures Inc. is a BC-based medical marijuana company poised to launch into the rapidly evolving cannabis sector. Lotus is in the final review stage of the Health Canada approvals to become a licensed producer, having arranged facility financing of up to $12 million, plus building permits for its prototype indoor production facility. Shares trade under the symbol J on the Canadian Securities Exchange. Visit our website at lotusventures.ca.
Gem International is a new diamond explorer in the richest diamond producing country in Africa, located next to the 4th largest producing diamond mine in the world. International Spotlight is on an 1109 carat diamond recently discovered in Africa by a fellow Canadian junior with a proven operator and finance team. Gem International trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol GI. Visit us at gemdiamondmining.com.
Welcome back. We're chatting with Rafe Mair. Rafe, today, Christy Clark finally said education is a priority for her, and she pointed to all the millions of dollars the BC government is pouring into it, except that was ordered by the Supreme Court of Canada. Nothing to do with her.
Well, I think I have a lot of trouble with Premier Clark on her credibility, her whole notion of what is the right and decent thing to do and say. That is just appalling hypocrisy. It's unbelievable. She set her cap to nail the teachers' union when she was back as education minister all those many years ago. And she went at it and at it and at it, and she lost at every turn in court. The teachers were right, and they were proved right, and they were proved right in the Supreme Court of Canada. And that's what's caused the situation to be as it is now, where the government is actually putting an appropriate amount of money into education, has damn all to do with Premier Clark. I hate to say this, and because it's a stretch, but I think that she would be delighted not to have to pay a nickel and have it all be private schools. And it just is. That's the kind of thing, along with you can't use the word lies, can you? The fibs, the prevarications that are endemic with that woman. She's just constitutionally incapable of dealing with the truth. That and that kind of indication of character is what really worries me. That whole spectacle, Jim, I can't believe what would happen when you go back to her days as education minister. I hate to use this term, in my day, but in my day, if that had happened with the NDP in power or us in power or anybody else in power, it would have brought the government down and would never have stopped. It was absolutely atrocious. But to now turn around and take credit for the good that she's forced to give because of the Supreme Court of Canada telling her to go to hell, that is really a bit much. God almighty. I can't believe she's got away with that so easily.
We'll have more with Rafe Mair right after this.
I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Rainy Mountain Royalty Corp., RMO on the TSX Venture Exchange. Rainy Mountain's Brunswick property is located in the Rideout Shear Zone in Ontario. With grab samples running as high as 32 grams per ton gold, a drill program will commence this spring to test the numerous targets located by recent groundwork. For more information, visit our website, rmroyalty.com.
In Goddard we trust.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Rafe Mair. Rafe, polls show that health care is the primary concern of BC voters. John Horgan says he'll build emergent care centers so that the emergency rooms don't get swamped with people with cut fingers and sore throats. But I haven't heard anything out of Christie. And one line she likes to use is, you have to elect me because there's so much more work to do. Didn't she have 15 years to do that?
Well, of course they did. And we've spoken about this before, if you remember, Jim. There's a problem in healthcare that is countrywide, and it's going to take a countrywide fix to get it going again. And very briefly, the law and the administration of health has not kept up with the changing science. We are now doing things that cost a whole pile of money that we're not paying people for, and we're not doing the things that are covered. And this is something that anybody who gets to be my age, I'll tell you, will tell you very, very quickly. When I was health minister, I don't think I heard 5 words out of people about, oh my God, the high cost of drugs. There were high cost of all kinds of other things they were worried about that we had to try to fix. But drugs weren't the big deal. If you had drugs, the doctor told you to take a couple of aspirin, and that was about it. Now, it is the big expense. And the amount of money that I have to pay at 85 years of age is unbelievable. I mean, it's staggering, and there's no help for it. Now, this means that the governments have all got to sit down and say, wait a minute, let's bring this up to date. It's almost as if we're moving from a horse and buggy into the automobile. How are we going to change things around? And they haven't done that. But the worst part of it, Jim, you just put your finger on a moment ago. Instead of the premier of the province, or indeed the leader of the opposition, saying, this is what we have, this is the nettle we have to grasp, folks. You've got to be ready for this. Neither of them are really saying that. Horgan's getting closer. But I can tell you why Christie isn't doing it. She hasn't got any money. She keeps on telling everybody she's balanced budgets, which is just rubbish. I hope that nobody listening to this believes for 1 second that budget is actually balanced. She talks about that, and yet she has blown in the last 4 years, including BC Hydro, over 70, count them, $billion. That's why she doesn't want to get into reforming healthcare. She hasn't got any money to do it. So who's doing the paying? You and me and all of the people who are listening now are paying extraordinary bills on things that aren't covered because science has changed, and they see no relief from the government because the government has blown their money. And it's no more complicated than that. But you know, one of the things you have to do, I think, Jim, if I may say so, you got to join the dots in these things. You can't just say, "Oh, look, there's healthcare. I wonder what's the matter," without looking. Say, "Wait a minute. I wonder if money's the matter. And if money's the matter, where did the money go? Where did BC Hydro's money go? Where did ICBC's money go? Where did the government's money go?" Because if they don't have that money, I guess they don't have money to fix healthcare. And that's precisely what's happened to this government. They've talked about being good stewards of public funds. They have been, statistically, never mind what Rafe Mair says, statistically they have been the worst government, at least in modern times, when it comes to that. They have doubled the provincial debt in 2016 dollars. They bankrupt BC Hydro. ICBC is on the ropes, and the government of British Columbia is on the ropes too in terms of its debt. It's running its government part. It's not bad, but the actual debt of the province has just skyrocketed. And so there is no dough to do the things that have to be done. It's no more complicated than that, as I say.
The Liberals run ads saying, remember when the NDP was government, they were horrible for business. People had to leave the province to find work. If the NDP was elected, would they come back with their, I call it the eat the rich policy?
Well, first of all, I don't think that they would. I think the NDP is a different party, just as if you count the Liberals as the old Socreds, they certainly are a different party, certainly different than the days when Bill Bennett was there. So there have been changes. These old names and the old positions on the political scheme things, they don't really count. But secondly, I'm not so sure that the NDP was quite as bad as they've been painted to be. One of the great skills of the right going well back before my time and my father's time, was demonizing in my dad's day, the CCF and then the NDP, and making it stick. And whatever things had gone wrong or appeared to have gone wrong, they stuck. Now, I say that not because I'm an apologist for the NDP at all. However, what I say, for this reason, when you remember when Gordon Campbell came to power, he claimed that the cupboard was bare, it was worse than he thought, there was a huge deficit he had to deal with. Turned out the NDP had left him with $1.5 billion in the bank, cash. And so these things, they're as much myth as they are reality. But I will not say for a second the NDP were good during that 10 years. The usual problem, they couldn't hold their leaders, they ate their young, and it was the usual thing they did. But I don't think that they're going to be a problem fiscally. But I put it this way, how could they possibly be worse? So I think that's what I've been writing is, I don't have any time for Horton. He doesn't like me at all, and I'm not terribly fond of him. But I do say this, that's got to be better than what we have because nothing could possibly be worse.
And also, too, do you believe that when somebody's been in power for a long time, the Alberta Conservatives were in there almost 50 years, we have the Liberals here 15 years, is it good to have a regime change? Because they really start to get very arrogant, and I think the way Christie treated that woman who asked her, I don't want to vote for you, and she just flipped her off.
There's no question that happens. I watched it happen. A lot of people my age watched it happen with W.A.C. Bennett. And matter of fact, we were talking about this last night, a few of us. And they were saying, well, what happened to Bennett? And I said, well, it all got old, and it all got nasty and grumpy at the same time. And when that happens, usually some incident comes along that exposes, what we're talking about. With the old W.A.C. Bennett, what happened was that he'd annoyed Ghilardi, because Ghilardi used to be highways minister, and he dumped him down to a smaller position because Ghilardi was using government planes to fly his daughter to Dallas and that sort of stuff. And WAC finally demoted him. And so Ghilardi, in the middle of the campaign, said, I think the old man's getting too old and I'm ready to take over any time. And of course it was a big issue and it really hurt the Socreds, and the Barrett's group came up the middle. Well, I'm just wondering about this incident in North Vancouver, 2 or 3 like that, whether that will bring the same reaction from people as Bennett's did back in 1972. I mean, it brought it from the right wing as well as the left wing when that kind of thing happens, because it exposed a whole pile of problems. And I think that's what's happening here with Christie. She's snapping, her temper snapping. She obviously hasn't got control of things. Her caucus are with her because she's winning, not because they like her or they think she's going to be any good as a premier, but you don't dump a winner. So I got a feeling that may prey on people's minds. They may look, say, I wonder whether these people are too long, too old, too arrogant, et cetera, and maybe just a change would be a good idea. I think there should be changes. I think anytime you see the government goes on too long, you see just what you're talking about now. You see the arrogance and so on come out of them. And 16 years is a long time. I think it's about time for a change.
Christie talks about NDP getting a huge donation from an international union. Look at this guy. He's standing next to Trump, so obviously he supports Trump. What about all the corporate donations that she's had?
Coming from, this is the thing that I was talking about a moment ago, and you don't know whether to laugh or cry. This is the same symptoms that we just talked about with the teachers. Here she is, glomming on the money left hand, and they're almost coming with bags of it to have meals with her, and they have to send the money back in the hundreds of thousands because it's been donated illegally and so on. And along comes a natural ally of the NDP, going back to the very beginning of time. The whole labor movement started, the labor parties started out of the labor movement in Great Britain and in the United States. And here's a natural ally comes along and does what you would expect them to do, pick up a few of the tabs. Maybe they shouldn't do. I don't know. I haven't not passing judgment on that. But compared to what she has done and what she would do if she could, that is just too much. It's that sort of thing, I think, that is bringing politics generally into disrepute. And it's a tough game to keep your reputation at the best of times. But when you have somebody that's done what she's done with party donations turning around well, it's too much. It really is.
Rafe, any things that you would like to tell voters before they step into the booth and cross the X?
I think the one thing that people must sooner or later understand, under the present system we have, which is rotten, if you vote for the person instead of the party, you don't understand how the system works. The person under our system means nothing. You might just as well elect a scarecrow because they have no power. The power is all coming out of the Premier's office, and that's the way it is, and there's nothing you're going to do about it until you change the system. And that's the sad part. So I'm just saying to people, you may think that Joe or Mary would make a great MLA. Ask yourself why. What are they going to do? They're going to do nothing except what they're told.
Rafe, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Always a pleasure, Jim. Thank you for having me.
My guest has been Rafe Mair, former BC cabinet minister and Canada's longest-running #1 radio talk show host. You're listening to the Goddard Report on TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Questions for the show or for our guests can be sent to info@howstreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.